do that? I hit the button and everything turned off. Okay. I have 3:17. We had a slight technical delay. I want to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission special meeting of Thursday, September 9th. I have two commissioners that are not with us, Commissioner Hill and Commissioner Porter. Nonetheless, we have a quorum, so we can proceed. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving ahead, we come to the citizen comment period on the agenda. Nobody signed up for the citizen comment period, so we can skip over that and go right to item number 5, which is the business items. Today is a special meeting and basically is being held to practice our public hearing presentation to the citizens and to City Council, which will be next Tuesday. The business item at hand is to discuss the draft zoning ordinance. We've talked among ourselves just preliminarily here, decided how we want to arrange things. We're going to try to practice and see if we can get it right so it's smooth when we get before the citizens. What we did was divide up the presentation into roughly quarters, and each one of us has a responsibility to present their slides. The slides were done mostly by Councilman Valdez, and we've thanked him profusely, and we will thank him again profusely for doing it because it would take another year to get it right. As it turns out, I'm the one that's supposed to present first, and I guess we can put up the slides if they'll project, and we can start right in. Okay. You might as well hand me a piece of wood. Is that it? No.
The big arrow.
The big arrow.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I did was turn it off. Why am I not seeing it?
Not seeing
Where do you want to go?
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to, this is a clicker, I'm sorry, I'm trying to point. I could be here most of the afternoon. I could be most of the afternoon pointing, couldn't I?
Okay, so this goes forward, this goes backwards, and if you press and hold this, there's a little red laser.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's the blind leading the blind.
As a matter of course, I do not like to have a slideshow and have the presenter read each slide to me. I don't need that. The slides are available. And in this case, this presentation is available on the city website and as well as the city YouTube channel. And I trust anybody that has enough interest to be in the audience on Tuesday night would also have enough interest to have looked at it on the website or YouTube and not rely on our interpretation totally. I don't know at this time whether or not Kat, you and Marissa had planned to outline, in my mind when I was looking over it, had planned to outline the ways that The citizens can submit questions before Tuesday and before the next public hearing before City Council. There's some rules involved that I think are important, and so you're not left out and don't think you have to be here or just watch it on the video.
Right. I can go over those briefly. It's basically the same things that we've been doing throughout COVID. We've been allowing people to submit their comments via email directly to me at city secretary email address, which can be found on city's website. It's on the notices. I believe it's also at the end of this PowerPoint presentation. And as long as they submit their comments to me 2 hours before the meeting, so that would apply to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on Tuesday at 6 p.m. As long as they submit them by 4 p.m., they'll be read that evening. The same rules apply if they were to be in person. They need to limit their comments to be able to be read in 3 minutes. We have an estimated word count on there, but it's really just the reasonableness of the email. If they send me an email that it's like 3 pages long, I'm only going to read however far I get in 3 minutes. So treat them the same as if somebody were to come in person. If they submit a comment via email and then they decide to come to the meeting and they decide to speak during the public hearing, their comment will not be read then. So not allowing them to basically speak twice. And then the same thing will apply for City Council. Any comments that I get before the Planning and Zoning public hearing, those comments will automatically be read during the City Council public hearing, in addition to any comments received in between Planning and Zoning's public hearing and 2 hours before City Council's public hearing. So no, people don't have to be here in person. I've only received 1 comment so far. So hopefully by Tuesday, we'll have a little bit more input from the public, but we'll see.
Thank you. That was informative. I had read it before, and it's always good to hear it again. Without further ado, let's get started. Let's start with the first slide, I guess. The first slide is an introduction to the new zoning ordinance. The second slide we have up already is the executive summary. Again, I'm not going to read these slides to you. The writing is big enough anybody can see them in the audience. Again, they're on the website and on the YouTube channel. Basically, this slideshow represents an overview of the changes to the ordinance. The high points are what we're trying to get to within this slideshow. On this first slide, it's important to note that the revised ordinance will not change the 3/4 acre minimum lot size in Garden Ridge. I've heard rumors to another effect. However, there is a space, if you will, within the city where 10,000 foot lots will be appropriate. That's in the residential neighborhood district. The key point there is that building in that area and using that lot size limitation will require access to a wastewater system, which at this point in time does not extend to that zone. But the ability to extend it there is available in the future. Other important things are there's no apartments and no hotels. So I may say that several more times so people get it and understand what it's all about. This practice session represents the first of 3 in-person bites at the apple, if you will, to hear this presentation. And I can't stress enough, it's on the website and it's on the YouTube channel. I'm sure if you ask the city staff, they'll print you a copy of this introduction, and down the line, the ordinance, once it's approved by the city council, will be available from city staff. This presentation will cover basically the master land use plan, and the new zoning ordinance. Oh, I had to, what's called, okay. It'll cover the land use plan and the zoning ordinance. The next slide outlines why we planned, why we have the master land use plan. The master land use plan, I believe, was from 2017, I believe. I'm not sure. We had help from Freeze Nichols, a outside firm, well-versed in public planning, to help us quite a bit. We stood over their shoulders, so to speak, and critiqued what they came up with and fine-tuned it to fit Garden Ridge. There's some things in there that they're looking ahead of us and know from experience what may come down the line, and gave us hints as to some things we should include in the ordinance. Planning is important because we want Garden Ridge to look like Garden Ridge. We want it to keep looking like Garden Ridge. The city itself does not control the private sector, and the best way to have somebody build what we want on that lot would be for the city to acquire that property, or a private citizen to acquire that property. Other than that, we can't tell them what to build. Well, in a sense, we can tell them what we recommend they build on that lot, and we have the city divided into zones, and the zoning ordinance that lead them in the direction we want them to be, in terms of fitting in with what the citizens of the city of Garden Ridge want. There was a survey done, I believe that was 2016 or 2015, a city survey, and Freeze and Nichols used the results from that survey to come up with the master land use plan. It's a framework to give us a way to do some future planning and future policing, to help guide us in infrastructure and the decisions that will be made into the future. We were well satisfied with the work they did, and hence, finally, after 3 years, we've come up with the revisions to the ordinance. It's 3+ years. I believe it was June timeframe when we started. Next slide. The master land use plan. Can I do both sides? Oh, there you go. It's important to realize it's not a zoning map, okay? But it is a future long-range map of what we and the citizens want Garden Ridge to look like. It's a guide for balanced, compatible, and diversified land use within the city. Next slide. This is a map of the future. This is the future land use map. I could probably draw this map in my sleep from memory. We've seen it over and over and over again. It's not as detailed as it looked. And the first thing I know most people do is try to find their street in Garden Ridge. But we have basically special planning areas, next slide, and that we use as a guide to what goes where to a certain extent. Garden Ridge, as you can see from the slide, is 78% built out. The remaining areas that are available for development are divided into the 5 special planning areas. A city can't control development market, so we don't know what's going to go within the planning areas, but we know has specifications and requirements for that area, and that's what comprises the zoning ordinances. Next slide. Okay, we're back to that map. And by now, most of you should be able to draw this map because we've seen it twice. In any event, the areas we're talking about are basically undeveloped areas. Anybody from Garden Ridge can recognize them very easily. Let's use the pointer. You want to do it for me? Okay. Special area number 1 is labeled a single-family infill area. Okay. That will be 3/4 lots or more because the need for septic will still be necessary in that area. Area number 2, moving along, is a mixed-use area. I don't think there's anybody that drives through Garden Ridge that wonder what's going there on 3009 and 2252 at the intersection, that big undeveloped property there. We have it designated to be a mixed-use area. Area number 3 is along 2252, and that's supposed to be a retail area. We would prefer more retail in that area than just the office space that's on the other side of the street right now. Again, we can't control what they put there. We can just encourage retail, and when it comes before planning and zoning, we look favorably upon projects that want to do some retail. Number 4 is a retail anchor area right there at the corner of 2252 and 3009. There's this Shell station there now and Caparelli's, and across the street is a vacant lot. I've heard rumors of some things going in there, but the rumors haven't been followed up with a presentation to planning and zoning, so at this time I won't talk about them. And area number 5 is further down on 2252, is the area of the mixed density residential, where in the future, medium density residential projects could be undertaken. The new zoning ordinance, next slide. The new zoning ordinance will replace the current ordinance, current ordinance 13-122018. Again, the master land use plan has been used as a guide to develop the regulation within this ordinance. Of note, if you read the next 3 lines, delineates who to throw stones at when things don't go the way you as an individual citizen think it should go in terms of what we decide can be developed there. The city council, as the elected officials, will serve as the board of adjustments, okay? The city administrator will be designated the zoning administrator. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall be responsible for reviewing and making recommendations, air quotes, making recommendations to the city council. We don't make the final decisions. We sit and talk about it as citizens of Garden Ridge and decide whether or not they meet the criteria for the special use, the variances, et cetera, vote on it, and then pass it on and present it to city council. And they are the ones that say yay or nay. Okay? Now, moving into the next section of the summary, we're going into the zoning districts. We got it? Okay. This is one of the few slides that I will read because it's very important. The zoning districts were created to specify the nature and components of the permitted development within them and to establish regulations regarding the physical character and intensity of development in order to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. The city is hereby divided into zones or districts, and the boundaries of the zoning districts set out herein are delineated on the official zoning map. The official zoning map, I might add, will look remarkably like the future land use plan, and that's probably the first question we ask when somebody comes before the Planning and Zoning Commission, is if your project is in alignment with the future land use plan. The zoning districts, next slide, are delineated on this slide. There's 3 for residential, 7 for non-residential and mixed use, and 3 special zoning districts. The next slide, for those of you that are interested, there's an equivalency table that tells you what the zone was before and what the new zone is now. Again, if we get this far, that means you're really interested in what's going on, and I'm sure you've read it before, and I don't need to read it to you. The residential zoning districts are agricultural and agricultural homestead district, residential estate district, and residential neighborhood district, okay? In order, the next slide, the agricultural and agricultural homestead district is basically for undeveloped land. We want to try to maintain the rural character as it is within Garden Ridge, and however, there is the future for future growth, okay? Agricultural uses are encouraged to be continued when possible. Something about people still want to look out the window and see, I guess, cows and other livestock from time to time. Next slide. The residential estate district, which was previously the single-family dwelling and country club district, will be subdivided for single residential use. These are areas that everybody's familiar with that are 3/4 of an acre and serviced by a septic system. Again, it includes the former country club district. Next slide. The next area is a new area, if you will. We didn't get any more land, just renamed something that was there. It's also a single-family district. There is, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to have a moderately dense pattern in area number 5, where quarter-acre lots or 10,000 square foot lots are possible, but again, the area would have to be saved by wastewater. If you got this far in the presentation and are keeping up with the ordinance, you know that the city has undertaken a a wastewater system, a grinder system, and it services mostly 2252 and that area along 2252 that is going to be developed, but there's ways and ways for future expansion to this side of 3009 and going down to area number 5. Next slide. Do the neighbor. Next slide, please. I'm back a slide. Okay, I did them. Okay, let's see where I am. Okay. This next slide just delineates the non-residential and mixed-use zoning districts, if you will. The first one is the neighborhood commercial district. Are you doing it? Or are they doing it? Yeah, please. Neighborhood commercial district, okay. And this district is delineated to support a residential area surrounding the district within a 1/2 to 1 mile radius, so to speak. It's adjacent to and integrated within the existing neighborhoods or any future neighborhood, and they must have pedestrian access to the development. They can have no use that adversely affects the residential character of the adjacent or integrated neighborhood. Next slide. The community commercial district is formerly the neighborhood service district, and it's zoned for retail and commercial use. It will have arterial streets and serve a radius of 3 to 5 miles. The next area to discuss is the overlay districts, of which there are 3. The mixed-use area that everybody's familiar with on 3009. We envision, and Freeze and Nichols suggested, we try to get a mixed-use urban fabric to that area. We'll see what the developers come up with, because again, the city doesn't own the property. It will allow, if somebody bought the total area, for a wider range of building types, setbacks, and street types. Again, this is areas 3, 4, and 5 on the map. The next area to discuss is the community mixed-use district. This is another new district, if you will. This is higher density mixed use with a variety of retail, office, and residential uses. It will contain within it a tight network of streets and drives. Again, this is areas 3, 4, and 5. The next district is a light industrial district, which is as what people would imagine. This is anticipated to represent an area where business parks or light industry or office warehousing could go. We don't anticipate and will not allow in a light industrial district any nuisances to the citizens, such as smoke or heavy traffic. In addition, we don't want this light industrial district to generate any increased traffic in the residential areas. That is area number, let me get that slide up again. The map, it's down near area 5 on the map. We don't have it delineated, but it's near area number 5 on the map.
It's actually.
Right. Utilities, schools, both public and private, and hospitals. The next area within the zoning ordinance that had any changes at all were the special zoning districts, which were the Aquifer Protection Overlay District and the Natural Features Overlay District, as well as the Planned Use Development. The Aquifer Protection Overlay District is basically well sites and areas that must be protected from nuisances, if you will, to the aquifer, okay? Well sites have a 1,500-foot radius around them, plus some in most cases. Next area is the Natural Features Overlay District. And the intent of this district is to retain the rural and natural character of Garden Ridge, and it's basically along 2252 and 3009 with an approximately 200-foot buffer. This is what we're planning and we'll be looking for when developers come to us. The last special district, if you will, is the planned use development. And this is my favorite just because of its name or nickname, the PUD. This is when a developer can come to us with some new and creative and innovative concepts. And I look at it as a developer saying, we don't really want to do what you want us to do, but here are our plan, here are our marketing presentation to see if it fits in with your city and see if we can fit in what our vision for that land is and make it fit what Garden Ridge would want in the future. We will encourage flexibility, which I think we all will need going into the future of Garden Ridge. There's a lot of citizens that want to keep Garden Ridge just the way it is, but there's an equal number that are really ready to adapt to some of the change. Next set of slides is for use regulations, and my co-commissioner Jacquemin is going to do those slides.
Okay, well, I'll be covering the section of the ordinance 2.05, the use regulations. And so in this slides, I'll be covering the land use regulations. And so basically, this will cover the land and buildings in each of the zoning districts that may be used for the specific uses in this section. Buildings and land can only be used in this specified permitted use. And in a chart that I'll kind of go through here and kind of talk through that. Here we developed a little, an index for the use chart, which we have it color-coded and with letters. And what we have is what you could use as a reference to kind of go through and see what is permitted in that use. So on the first one, you have a P, which stands for permitted by right, and then you have, and that's in green, and in yellow you have the P with a number, and when you see that there's a number sign next to it, it's permitted by right and subject to the reference conditions. And you need to just reference back to this in the ordinance, the 2.05.06, which goes through the uses of that. And and some of the uses are like a community home or group home, dwelling accessories, agricultural use, bank or financial. I won't go through all of them, but there's quite a few. Fuel on pump stations, home-based, and those are just some examples. Then you have the S, which is permitted upon approval of a specific use permit. And then you have the S, which is permitted upon approval of a specific use. And you need a reference, then it references the condition for that. And then the X, which is like a dark gray shade, is prohibited use. So I'll go through the chart just real briefly. As you'll see in the chart, you have in this particular section of the chart, there's quite a few sections in it, but this one's broken up for the residential uses. And just for example, so on that top column, you'll see here that is your zoning districts, and here are your in this particular slide is your residential uses, and then you whatever the district you're in and you're planning to for that type of use, you could just, if you're doing a dwelling or accessory, and then you look for that zoning district, and you could see, like for example, in the agriculture and ag homestead, this first column, and you want to do a dwelling accessory, is permitted, and then there's a B next to it, and B is, let me look at my notes real quick. That's a dwelling accessory. So that's what's permitted in there. Here are, this next slide will talk about the non-residential uses. And pretty much the same applies for, we broke it up by the zoning districts here, and then the non-residential uses here, and then you could see whether or not those are permitted in those zoning districts and you'll see here, there's a lot of X's that are not, that are prohibited. So you could just, see, and it's a real good, this chart, very helpful to see how those zoning districts and what uses can be applied or can be put in there. So it kind of goes on to more non-residential uses. It really gets into it drills down to those uses, from, an antique shop here all the way down to like a bed and breakfast inn. For example, like a bed and breakfast inn, you'll see where it is permitted in a community commercial district, the CC zoning district. It is permitted there. So that's just a nice, easy way to kind of have our, the ordinance as a quick reference and much easier to reference to. So here are just some more non-residential uses, car washes, a brewery, microbrewery, child care facility, churches, college or universities, contractor's yard or storage yards, and you could kind of see where those fall within those zoning districts.
Commissioner Jacquemin, say if I was a young entrepreneur and I wanted to do a hand car wash, when I come to the city and say I want to do a hand car wash business, how would I use this chart? How could I use it? I say, well, I'm thinking of putting it over on 2252 down towards Bracken. Could I do that?
Well, you would have to go to that, we want to make sure that your property, you got to reference the zoning map.
Okay.
That would be, click
No.
back.
Go to the chart.
Yeah,
where
go-
it shows
Oh,
car
the
Use
wash.
chart.
chart,
Okay,
yeah.
I thought you wanted me to go to the
No,
No,
zone.
no,
no,
go to the
no.
chart where it shows car
Chart.
wash.
So, yeah, just look at car wash.
There.
Okay. So we'll say, yeah, full-service car wash. And I wanted to put it down on 2252, which I think is mostly an agricultural homestead area. Could I put it there? I see a big X there. I mean, it's no sense even come to the city with that. Is that
Right,
what I mean?
that will be prohibited.
can't
You
go there.
cannot.
Okay.
You can come, I mean, there is a zoning, I guess, I'm assuming, a zoning change that you
Uh-huh.
could request, and that would come to planning and zoning for a zoning request. But, I mean, it's showing here for that it is prohibited in that ag.
Well, it looks like I'm backed into a corner. The only place I could do it is where that S is, okay? And the S means, what did you say the S was?
So the S is permitted
commu-
upon approval of a specific use permit.
Okay,
So
so-
you'll have to come in front of this planning and zoning, and we'll have to review that.
And there's no sense in me coming before planning and zoning unless it's in the community commercial district, and the plans include wash bays and 5 stacking spaces? Is that what it is, the parking requirements going across?
That's correct.
Okay, so that gives me a guide
It gives you a guide.
before I even waste my time coming to the city and saying, I want to put this here. Okay, I
That's
think I
correct.
understand.
So maybe I'll do that in my presentation, kind of
Just
give that.
pick
some-
one. Just
Pick
pick one.
one and
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
run
yeah,
through it?
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, I will do that. So, so these kind of a summary of this use chart. You'll see that it contains residential and non-residential uses with a P or and a number sign next to it, a P or an S with a number sign, and that references the use. So you can reference that, and depending on the type of use, you could see the zoning. And I think that's how the next slides will cover the the conditions, dwellings, accessories, garage sales, and short-term rentals.
Not to steal my co-commissioner's thunder, but I think all of us, when we talked about the ordinance and the revisions, this was probably our favorite part, because you can reference this chart and pretty much have an idea of what goes where. And if it doesn't fit in there and doesn't have an S, don't waste our time and your own time unless you can come up with some PUD, planned use development, to fit it in there. And I think these slides were, to me, were the most informative ones as a citizen to see, or a young entrepreneur, or an old entrepreneur, for that matter, where I could fit into Garden Ridge without wasting a whole lot of time. The developers, I imagine, unless they're mom and pop developers, will know how to use this ad nauseum and how to get around it if they need to get around it. But again, they have a PUD, they can sell us on it and have a good plan. I think we'll entertain them.
Okay, so the next couple of topics are referenced in section 20506. And please understand that there's a lot of information in this section, and what we'll be covering on the next few slides are strictly the highlights of some particular topics. The first topic being dwelling accessory. Only one accessory dwelling shall be located on one lot. The accessory dwelling may be occupied by a guest, a caregiver, a relative, or a family member. And what's the difference between a family member and a relative? Maybe relative could be extended relative or something versus a family member. But anyway, that's what's delineated here. Accessory uses located in the residential districts shall not be for commercial purposes other than authorized and legitimate home occupations. The next slide has to do with garage sales. Garage sales are allowed only on property zoned agriculture and agricultural homestead, residential estate, and residential neighborhood districts. This shall also include, besides just garage sales, it will include yard sales and estate sales. You will be permitted in the draft ordinance to have 2 garage sales, yard sales, or estate sales, two times per calendar year per household, and only between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. You cannot exceed 3 days in length, and there must be a minimum of 5 days in between sales. You may not have a blockage of streets like parking. Permits will be required to conduct garage sales. And one of the reasons that we're doing this, or that this is being changed, is because if you have more than the allowable number of garage sales or the allowable number of days, this becomes a home-based business, and there's a lot of other requirements that go into that particular topic. So the next one is short-term rental. This may be something that a lot of people are excited about, and others may not even want us to go there. But I think that with the draft ordinance, it's become something that legally has to be allowed in the city, but we are kind of containing as to where these short-term rentals will be permitted. So, a rental for compensation of a dwelling, as defined in the International Residential Code, is for the purpose of overnight lodging for a period of not less than 1 night, nor more than 30 days. Short-term rentals are a commercial use and therefore prohibited in residential districts. They will be permitted in the following zoning districts: neighborhood commercial, community commercial, neighborhood mixed use, and community mixed use. A short-term rental permit is required. And as I mentioned before, there are a lot of other regulations and restrictions in Section 20506L with regard to short-term rental. This is just the highlight. Zoning dimensional regulations table. This table actually gives you the minimum and maximums for certain requirements, such as minimums for building setback distance, lot size, and maximum dwellings per acre, lot frontage, width, and length. Also, it gives you the maximums for building height, building coverage, and impervious cover. Looking at this chart, I'd like to just go over a couple of the districts so that you as a resident will know pretty much how you can zone into what's allowed. The first one is going to be residential neighborhood. Well, no, let me back up to residential estate. This is one that pretty much has not changed over the years. If you will notice, the maximum lot area square foot is 32,670, which pretty much translates to our 3/4 acre lots. So that the residential estate will not change as far as lot size. The maximum building coverage is 25%, and the maximum impervious cover stays at 35%. Moving on down to neighborhood mixed use. Get this neighborhood mixed use right here. Oh wait, I need to back up to neighborhood residential neighborhood, which is right here. This is our new section in Zone 5, and you are allowed, the minimum lot area is allowed to be 10,000 square feet with 4 dwelling units per acre. The maximum building coverage is 40%, and the maximum impervious cover is 50%. Again, this is allowed in Zone 5. The neighborhood mixed use, you can actually have 6 dwelling units per acre with maximum building coverage of 60% and impervious cover of 65%. I think the next one that people would be interested in is community mixed use, where you have community mixed use. Here, you will be able to have the possibility of 8 dwelling units per acre, and you could have 60% building coverage and 65% impervious cover. So this should allay some questions with regard to the residential estate. There will not be allowed, you will not be allowed to have anything less than 3/4 acre lots. So that, and then going forward in the more commercialized or the one section that's been designated in a zoning 5, you can go to smaller or medium sized lots.
Can I just, for presentation purposes, if you already have the ones you're going to pick out, could we highlight those 3 or 2 or 3 that she has so that people could easily see those? The writing is so small, it's difficult to follow if we are trying to make that.
Yeah, so do the residential estate, the neighborhood, residential neighborhood district, and neighborhood mixed use and community mixed use, please. Thank you. Next, we move to section 2.06 with developmental regulations. And this section covers, for future developments, items such as landscaping, fencing, parking, building material, lighting, and other items. We'll move on to the next slide, which discusses a few other things within the developmental regulations. So, the first one is accessory structures. This section is 20604, and under item number 7, you will find a table that designates exactly how many structures you may have depending on the lot size, the maximum number of square feet that the structures combined can have, etc. So, for example, on lots that are 3/4 acre and larger, which is which pretty much all of Garden Ridge is right now, you will be limited to a maximum number of 3 accessory structures with a total combined square footage on all structures of 3,000 square feet. One of the things that is going to be different in the proposed new draft ordinance is that accessory structures connected to the main structure via a sidewalk or breezeway will now actually be considered a separate structure and not part of the main structure. That is a big change. So need to be aware of that. The next slide talks about other development regulations, and this is the first one: storage and use of vehicles and equipment in residential districts is 2.06.07. This provides, among a lot of other things, provides the parking requirements for recreational vehicles, house trailers, travel trailers, boats, and commercial or farm vehicles. You need to go to this section, 20607, to see all the stipulations regarding this topic. Lighting can be found in section 2.06.10, and this regulates outdoor lighting to reduce or prevent light pollution in the city. The next slide has to do with section 3, supplemental development regulations, and actually goes from page 119 of the ordinance through 131, and deals with requirements for site visibility triangle, sign regulation, outdoor antennas, tree preservation, and flagpoles. These were just picked out as some regulations and topics that we figured most residents would like to know about, especially if they were going to be different than what has been used in the past. That is the end of our slideshow presentation. And I want to take a minute to thank everyone who came out and also who may want to speak at the public hearing with any questions. That's why this is being actually done. And again, we can say that the draft ordinance can be seen in its entirety under the CI Garden Ridge, Texas, US Document Center. So you can make a copy if you'd like, or just go online and look at it. And any comments or questions, please submit to Marissa Spencer at City Secretary by September 14th before 4 p.m. Our questions and comments will be addressed at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on September 14th, 2021 at 6 p.m. and will be followed by a public hearing. Thank you.
On slide 39, under the dwelling accessory, we do have relative or family member. I looked through the definitions, and the only thing that's addressed is family. So.
Do we want to strike relative?
Take that redundancy out.
Yeah. So a guest, caregiver, or family member. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
And I will update this last slide, because obviously this will be presented at
Right,
the September
at that.
14th meeting. So
Right.
I'll remove those last two paragraphs so that you can just simply say the draft zoning ordinance is available online.
Okay, and also going back to slide 20 on the neighborhood mixed-use overlay district, we took out zone 5, but we need to make sure we add zone 2, because that is 3 right there. I mean, 2 is the mixed use. So it's 2, 3, and 4.
Is that only for neighborhood mixed use, or is that for also community mixed use?
No, community is 3 and 4.
Okay, I will add number 2.
Okay, 2 goes to the mixed use.
I'm unsure when in the presentation we answer the questions that are submitted to the city. And when do we answer the questions submitted the day of the presentation? If they throw us a curveball, I'm assuming anybody on the podium or the dais that can answer it. I'm looking particularly at the city manager, city administrator, if we get backed into a corner about something. None of us are completely conversant in the whole 173 pages of the document. And so if citizens have a question, how do we address it if we can address it that evening? Do we say, we'll make note of that, the city secretary or assistant secretary will make note of that and we'll get back to them individually, or do we do it in a public forum, or how do we handle that? How do we anticipate handling that?
So on the agenda for September 14th, there is an item that's after the public hearing that says discuss comments and questions from public hearing. I would say let's try to address everything as much as we can during that item. If something comes up that nobody here knows the answer right then, one thing we can do is we can search the ordinance using the Word document for any keywords if it's something that can be answered by the ordinance, since none of us have it memorized. And if it's something that we can get an answer to, I think I would like for us to try to answer it in the meeting. Worst case scenario, though, we can let people know that we will get back to them and they'll either hear from city administrator, me, or assistant city secretary on whatever their question is.
Can we answer it when we have the next public hearing with city council?
I think it would be better to answer it prior to it going to that point.
There's a lag of what, the 14th to the 1st of the next month? Yeah, we got 3 weeks to do it. We should be able to answer it.
Well, we
in
have
3
not set the public hearing for the city council
Certainly,
yet.
Certainly.
And that will be set after we find, after after your public hearing to see if y'all make a recommendation. Because actually, they would be conducting a public hearing on Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. So there should be ample time for us to answer any questions. Marissa, now the question and answer area, was that prior to the public hearing on the agenda or after the public hearing?
It's after. So
Okay.
before the public hearing, there is presentation and introduction to new zoning ordinance,
Okay,
and then the public hearing, and then discuss comments and questions from public hearing, and then discuss and make possible recommendations.
okay.
And now, will their questions, so their questions will be held until item 4.3, correct? So that we get through the presentation, we don't have anybody stopping us and asking us questions at that point, okay? Yeah, because I think then we'll lose track of the whole thing.
Other questions or discussion amongst the commissioners? I guess we can get back to the agenda then. We're at business item, actually 5B, which is future agenda items. The future agenda item is the normally scheduled Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on September 14th. Is there anything that we need to add to that agenda? We have time now to add anything else to that agenda if we need to. No? Then we move ahead to the next item on the agenda, which is the citizen comment period. At this time, if the citizens want to comment, there's no limit to the citizen comment period is limited to 20 minutes total. The citizen themselves is limited to, I think, a 2-minute time frame. And if you have a comment, you have to give your name and address and then give it to the city secretaries so we have it for the public record. Does anybody wish to speak? Then we'll move right on in the agenda to the next item, which is adjournment. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
I have a motion. I need a second for adjournment. I have a motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor? By show of hands, aye. We are adjourned at 4:23 p.m.
So you actually